Hi, I'm Everly. At my own graduation, my moment, they laughed at me. In front of 300 guests, my parents, my sister, and when the clapping died down, they leaned in and whispered something to the dean. That whisper rewrote everything I had worked for. But that day didn't break me. It unmasked them. What do you do when your own family turns your future into their legacy and leaves you behind like a secret? You dig. You uncover. You fight. And then, you speak, ready to hear what they tried to silence. I arrive before 10, stepping onto the campus grounds with trembling hope. The morning sun climbs over rows of eucalyptus and palm trees. My cap and gown feel heavy, like expectations draped across my shoulders. I clutch the speech in my hand, every word I had practiced alone in my apartment, certain that this was my moment. I walk by familiar banners, "Congratulations, graduates," Department of Biological Sciences, blue and gold fluttering in the light breeze. I spot Vera, my mother, standing near a cluster of alumni guests, chatting with someone whose back is to me. Leora smiles beside her, the golden sash gleaming. My heart stutters. I search the honored graduates list taped to the bulletin board. My name, Everly, doesn't appear. Honorable mention, highest distinction. Nothing shows for me. A coldness settles. They release the graduating class into rows of white folding chairs. My heart beats so loud I want to cover my ears. The usher motions me toward the back, near the catering tent, far from the platform. My palms sweat. I nod, voice lodged in my throat. In front, Leora slips into a chair with Vera bending to adjust her tassel. They belong there. I do not. A gentleman in a navy blazer leans over and says, "Sorry, only family and honorary guests up front." I nod again. I fold my speech in my hands. I keep breathing, counting steps. I brace when the camera crew sweeps past the first rows without a glance at me. The metal-clad professors, the proud families, they don't know I exist, or choose not to. Then I catch Vera's voice, just a whisper. She's speaking to the dean. I can't hear every word, but clarity cuts through. "Please don't let her speak. She's already taken up too much space in this family." The dean nods. I hear the shuffle of papers, a shift in the ceremony program. My name is erased, silently, my debut stolen before applause. My cue is nowhere. My body tightens. I press the speech against my chest, feeling the printed ink bite my skin through cloth. I see flashbacks, birthdays without candles, awards that turned into family posts for Leora, ideas I shared late at night, dismissed, retold by someone else in brighter light. A murmur travels through the audience. Someone whispers, "Who is she?" A child nearby tilts his head and says, "She looks sad." A stranger hands me a tissue. I take it, but I do not respond with tears. I won't offer the image they expect. I wrap my fingers around that tissue, imagining its rough edges are shields. Leora stands. She waves. Her smile is perfect in every photo op. The cord of her gown swings. The emblem on her chest nearly identical to mine. I watch as light glints off her metal. Flashbulbs go off. The world sees her. I stand up. I fold my speech. I walk past rows of bodies who turned their faces. The grass whispers beneath my heels. The applause rolls across the stage, echoes dripping with pride, but not mine. I exit quietly, stepping past folding chairs, over crushed programs, through the gravel walk. My diploma remains on the podium, handed to someone else, or maybe reserved. I was meant to be called. I was meant to be seen. They refused. I walk along the edge of the field. The air smells of sun and dirt. Somewhere a trumpet sounds, part of the ceremony still going on, and I feel its note cut clean through the tension inside me. I whisper, I wasn't invisible. They just refused to see me. They didn't forget me. They erased me. The words circled in my head like a swarm of bees as I stepped out of the ceremony tent and into the glaring sun. Heat pressed against my skin with a weight that felt less like weather and more like judgment. The kind that doesn't just scorch but lingers, clinging until you can't breathe. Behind me, the tent was alive with sound. Bursts of laughter, the click of camera shutters, the occasional squeal of reunion. Families pulled each other close for photos, arms draped over shoulders, mortarboards tossed into the air at just the right angle. It should have been a day of celebration, my day. Yet all of it felt distant, muffled, almost mocking, like I had slipped into someone else's dream where everyone knew the script. But me, my fingers dug into the straps of my bag as my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, thumb hovering, and saw a flood of messages. Classmates tagging one another in celebratory posts, photos of group hugs, victory captions stacked with emojis. Moments I should have been in, except I wasn't. My name wasn't there, my face wasn't either. I walked away from the swell of joy and noise, letting my heels click against the pavement until I found a spot at the edge of the reception area. A low cement ledge sat in the shadow of the tent, where stacks of untouched pamphlets and trays of hors d'oeuvres waited for hands that never came. The scent of wilting flowers mixed with baked cheese and lukewarm champagne. I sat down, back straight, heels biting into concrete, the heat radiating up through the soles of my shoes. I opened my phone again, swiping to the digital brochure, the one the university had sent out proudly that morning. Departmental awards. Highest distinction, honor roll. My eyes scanned the list once, then again, desperate to find it. But it wasn't there. No Everly R. Jacobs. I stared at the empty space where my name should have been until the screen blurred with heat and sweat. Every achievement I had fought for, erased in one clean stroke of omission. A notification pinged. Leora's latest post slid across my feed. A glowing selfie, medal pinned to her sash, sunlight bouncing perfectly off her cheekbones. Vera had already commented, "So proud of Leora's exceptional achievements. A rising star for the family." The words hit harder than the omission in the brochure. I scrolled through the hundreds of likes, the congratulations, the comments praising her brilliance, her dedication, her legacy. My stomach twisted. The air shifted. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in months appeared at the edge of the crowd, shielding her eyes from the sun. She tilted her head, smiling faintly. "Hi, sweetie," she said warmly. "You're Leora's friend, right? I saw you at Thanksgiving." Her voice was kind, but the words hit me like the final nail in a coffin. "I'm her sister," I said, forcing the words past my throat. Confusion flickered in her eyes. She glanced down at my gown, my tassel, the cap still clutched in my lap. "Oh," she said softly. "You weren't in any of the photos." Her smile faltered into awkward silence. She patted my arm once before drifting back into the crowd, leaving me alone with the echo of her words. They weren't mistakes. They weren't accidents. They were choices. Choices made deliberately, etched into the fabric of this day. My mind reeled backward, unspooling years of smaller cuts that had led here. Freshman year, when I earned a scholarship on my own, yet my parents told the extended family that Leora had helped me apply. The endless late nights in the lab when I developed my capstone project, while Vera praised other students for teamwork, but never acknowledged my name. My valedictorian speech in high school, drafted, practiced, delivered perfectly, stripped from the school newsletter under the excuse of highlighting the whole department. Every time, my name replaced, my credit erased. I wiped sweat from my brow, folded the speech I had planned to deliver today, and tucked it into my wallet like contraband. Proof that I had written words worth saying, that I had earned a voice here, even if no one else wanted to hear it. A small figure appeared at my side. My young cousin, cupcake in hand, buttercream petals swirled in pale pink, sugar crystals catching sunlight. She held it out to me without hesitation. "They didn't let you talk, huh?" she said with childlike honesty, her voice soft. I smiled, polite, careful. "No, they didn't." I took the cupcake. I didn't eat it. I just held it in one hand, while my other hand closed tightly around the folded speech. Sweetness in one palm, silence in the other, both hollow. Afternoon shadows stretched long and thin as the sun began its slow descent. Still, the heat clung to everything, heavy and relentless. I rose from the ledge, dusted crumbs of cement from my gown, and walked toward the parking lot. Asphalt burned beneath my steps, Cars idled with engines humming, air conditioners blasting behind rolled-up windows. At the edge of the lot, beneath a jacaranda tree, I stopped. Purple petals drifted to the ground like quiet rain, scattering across my shoulders and shoes. I stood there watching as Vera and Liora emerged from the tent, arms linked, their laughter carrying across the space between us. They slipped into a waiting SUV, doors shutting with a soft, definitive thud. Their silhouettes blurred behind tinted glass, a picture of unity, of triumph, of a family complete. Without me. My fingers curled into fists, then unclenched, then curled again. My chest rose and fell, each breath heavier than the last. I whispered, low enough for no one else to hear, words only for myself. They didn't forget me. They erased me. And for the first time, I said it not as a wound, but as a truth. They didn't forget me. They erased me. By the time I reached my apartment downtown, the Los Angeles skyline had begun to bruise with evening. The sun slid down behind towers of steel and glass, painting the sky in ribbons of orange and violet. From my window, the streets below pulsed with honking cars and the blur of neon signs, but inside, the silence was thick. When I shut the door behind me, the sound of the lock sliding into place echoed like a verdict. My heels clacked against the hardwood floor, each step a heavy punctuation mark to a day I couldn't rewrite. I didn't bother turning on the lights right away. Instead, I slipped off the graduation cap and gown, fabric still crisp, still carrying the smell of the ceremony tent. I hung them on the knob of the hallway closet, where they drooped like borrowed costumes from a play where I hadn't been allowed to speak. I sank onto the couch, exhaling, and pulled my laptop into my lap. Maybe somewhere, in some corner of social media, my name existed, some tag, some fleeting recognition. My fingers hovered as I opened the browser and typed reflexively, Instagram, Facebook, the university's official graduation gallery. Every frame glowed with applause, with spotlights, with carefully posed smiles. Every frame was filled with my sister. Liora's grin lit up the feeds, her hand always extended, her body angled perfectly toward the cameras. Vera, our mother, was never far behind, her arm hooked proudly through Liora's, her face tilted toward the flashbulbs. In one photo, Vera was even kissing her on the cheek, laughter spilling from her like champagne. And there it was, the family portrait, everyone neatly arranged, medals and sashes pinned in place, centered in the middle, Liora. My own cap and gown draped over her shoulders. Mine. She had asked to borrow them just for the mirror, a harmless little request in the middle of a crowded dressing room earlier that day. And I, too soft, too eager to avoid conflict, had said yes. But photographs don't lie. She hadn't borrowed. She had taken. She had claimed. And in every frame that would outlast the day, I was reduced to a shadow at the edge, an extra in the background of my own story. My heart twisted, not just from today, but from all the days that had stacked to build this one. I remembered freshman year, when Liora used my student ID to sneak into the lab after hours. She laughed when I asked her not to. What's the big deal? We're sisters. Those nights, I was the one hunched over microscopes, grading slides, logging data into spreadsheets. I was the one who stayed until morning, eyes blurry, shoulders aching. And yet, when family emails went out bragging about Liora's groundbreaking research, my name never appeared. A ping broke the silence. My phone lit up with a message from Mia, a classmate I trusted. Her words cut through the fog. Did you see the UC Daily Post? They credited Liora with your project concept. The breath drained out of me. I inhaled again, slowly, but my throat burned like I had swallowed glass. I should have felt rage, pure and sharp. But what rose in me was something heavier. Not bitterness, not grief. Anger. Clean, unignorable anger. Another notification. A video file. Title. Behind the scenes. Grad Day. My thumb hovered before pressing play. The clip opened with me, walking toward the stage, speech folded in my hand. But as I approached the center, an event staffer stepped neatly in front of the lens, gently steering me toward the wings. The camera panned away just in time to frame Liora stepping forward, adjusting a medal, basking in applause that wasn't hers. The cap I wore became nothing more than the faint edge of black fabric at the side of the frame. I had been there. I had existed. And yet, watching it back, it looked like I hadn't. This wasn't invisibility. This was deliberate. This was someone's hand on the scale, tilting it, pressing me into the shadows. I closed the laptop with a snap, and in the black reflection of the screen, I caught my own face, eyes glassy, cheeks still flushed from the sun, lips pressed tight to keep from trembling. My chest rose and fell too fast, the kind of breathing that comes when your body fights between fight and collapse. I reached for the yearbook stacked on my shelf, flipping through pages I'd already memorized. My picture, small, tucked at the bottom of the spread. The caption beneath it? Not my words. A misprint, they said, but not a mistake. Lyora's quote printed beneath my face. I had emailed corrections. I had submitted the proper copy twice. But Vera had assured me, changing it would just draw attention. Better to leave it clean. The kind of clean that erases fingerprints, footprints, entire lives. Evening deepened. My lamps clicked on automatically, casting long rectangles of amber across the hardwood. I paced, window to desk, desk to window, back again. I could still hear the muffled noise of graduation laughter carried in through the glass. Somewhere downtown, music spilled out of bars. Celebration in other apartments rose like faint echoes. I was a ghost in the middle of a city still alive. I returned to the desk. With trembling fingers, I opened Word. A blank document stared back at me, endless white waiting to be filled. I typed 3 words. The parts they left out. Just the title. Nothing else. It sat there at the top of the page like a dare, like a promise. I pulled out the folded speech from my wallet, smoothing the creases. The words I had written for the ceremony, words I had never been allowed to speak. I set it next to the keyboard. Then I opened folders, emails, archives. My published abstract versus the draft I had written in full. The CC'd emails from professors acknowledging my role, screenshots of submission timestamps. The proof was all there, buried under years of family maneuvering and institutional oversight, but undeniable. File by file, I organized them into folders. Everly Project Final, Everly Project Submit. Honor Roll documented. Side-by-side comparisons, receipts, screenshots. Everything they said didn't exist. I had it. Midnight crept in quietly. Sirens wailed distantly before dissolving into silence. My desk lamp cast a small circle of light, the only witness to my quiet war. Outside, city lights smeared through my curtains like paint. Sleep was a stranger. My eyes burned, but my hands refused to stop. For the first time, I wasn't begging for recognition. I wasn't waiting for a photograph or a caption or a smile of approval. I was building something else, a record, a monument, a case. In that quiet, I whispered aloud, my voice hoarse but steady. I will not fade quietly anymore. I will collect everything. I will make it undeniable. And for the first time, the word undeniable didn't feel like a wish. It felt like a plan. Monday morning began with rain sliding down my apartment window, thin streaks against the glass that blurred the skyline outside. The sky was heavy, a dull slate gray pressing down on the city like a weight you couldn't shrug off. I moved slowly, dragging myself from the warmth of bed into the cool quiet of the living room. The air smelled faintly of last night's coffee grounds and rain-soaked asphalt drifting in through the open window crack. I brewed a fresh pot, dark roast, stronger than usual. The steam curled upward in soft tendrils, and I found myself staring at it, mesmerized. Silence hung all around me. No laughter from family, no congratulations from friends, no echoes of the ceremony that should have felt like triumph. Just the muted hum of the city waking and the blinking of email notifications on my laptop. I sat at my desk, the lamp casting a halo of tired light across papers scattered in half-organized piles. On my screen was my final capstone project, the one I had poured 9 months of my life into. I knew every draft, every data set, every graph. I could recite the hypothesis in my sleep. Yet as I scrolled through the pages, a hollow question gnawed at me. Did I ever really own this? Or was I always performing brilliance for someone else to claim? With a shaky breath, I clicked open the departmental newsletter. The headline glared back at me: Advancing Women's Economic Agency, New Research from Campus. Beneath it was Lyora's photo, her smile radiant, her profile neatly polished. The text beneath described my core hypothesis, the model I had built with sleepless nights, testing variables, running numbers until my eyes blurred. Her name sat neatly under the headline. Vera's name too appeared in the byline, but mine, absent. I sat back, coffee cooling untouched. The rain outside softened to a mist, cars hissing on wet pavement. I stood, paced to the window, palms pressing against cool glass. Across the city, trees shook their leaves clean, stretching under the weight of drizzle. My phone buzzed again. Another press release forwarded to me. This one from the Fellowship Committee, Lyora Jacobs, finalist for the annual grant in social innovation. The document included excerpts, language lifted directly from my capstone draft, edited just enough to seem original. And there it was again, Vera's post on social media. So proud of Lyora's groundbreaking work in Women's Economic Agency. Proud, groundbreaking, words that had never been attached to me, though the work was mine. I slammed the tab closed before bile could rise. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't stand the apartment anymore. I grabbed my keys, drove to my favorite cafe in the neighborhood, a place that smelled of espresso and cinnamon sugar, where the walls were lined with mismatched art. I ordered a latte, light milk, no sugar. I sat at a corner table, notebook open. I began to sketch, not equations this time, but a plan. Movement by movement, document by document, proof. I typed out a message to my academic advisor, Dr. Simon. Did you review the draft of my capstone? I saw the press release crediting Lyora. I'd appreciate clarity. Hours passed. No response. The cafe crowd shifted around me, baristas calling out orders, couples laughing quietly, the rain outside thinning until only damp shadows remained on the sidewalks. Still nothing from Simon. Restless, I left. Drove across town to the department building, my tires cutting through puddles. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of lemon polish and old books. I knocked on the office door of the department head, Dr. Alvarez. She let me in, her voice polite, practiced. I laid everything on the desk, emails, screenshots, copies of the press release. I said, steady as I could, I'd like to know why my research shows up under someone else's name. She sighed, poured tea into a ceramic cup, always tea, never coffee, like that made her diplomacy softer. Family matters make things messy, Everly, she said. We don't want scandal. It could hurt the department's reputation. The words stung like vinegar on an open wound. I forced my voice even. This isn't scandal. It's truth, and it should matter. She glanced at the papers again. We're investigating, she said finally, but her eyes gave her away. Resignation, not urgency. She expected me to wait, to stay quiet. When I walked back to my car, anger flared hotter than embarrassment. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Betrayal burned in my chest, but I didn't cry. Not anymore. Tears would change nothing. What I needed wasn't pity, it was action. At a red light, I opened the cloud folder on my phone, uploading the files I had guarded for months. Original drafts, raw datasets, time-stamped experiment notes, metadata verified. I renamed each file with care. Everly Original, Everly Draft V1, Everly Final, Evidence, my evidence. By evening, I was back home, the city outside buzzing with nightlife. Neon signs flickered, laughter floated through thin walls from the apartment next door. I sat cross-legged on my bed, laptop balanced on my knees. With steady fingers, I posted a short note to the closed alumni forum. No names, no accusations, just facts. Credited work isn't always visible. Sometimes it's copied. Sometimes it's quietly reworded. I've lived that. I believe transparency is overdue. Replies trickled in, some skeptical, some dismissive. But more than I expected were supportive. Thank you for saying this. I went through something similar. You're brave to speak. Quiet nods in a space I thought would ignore me. Then my phone rang. Vera's name lit up the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Why are you digging this up again?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp as glass. "Because you've made a habit of erasing me," I said flatly. I heard muffled movement. Leora's voice cut in, wounded, rehearsed. "Why are you always trying to start something? Why can't you just be happy for me?" "This isn't starting," I said, low but firm. "This is standing." There was silence. Then Leora's voice again, softer but barbed. "People are already talking. You're making yourself look bad." Vera sighed heavily, the kind of sigh meant to signal exhaustion with me, not guilt in herself. The line went dead. I sat alone in the apartment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of traffic below. The dark pressed against the window, but inside me something shifted. Rage was useless unless I channeled it. Pain had no value unless I carved it into proof. I whispered into the silence, voice steady, a promise only for myself. "I'm done asking. Time to take." And for the first time, the words didn't feel like rebellion. They felt like truth. I'm done asking. Time to take. By Wednesday morning, the air in my apartment felt heavier than usual. Thick, charged, almost alive, as though it had been holding its breath and waiting for me to act. I rubbed my burning eyes, the ache of sleepless nights pressing against my skull. My laptop screen glared bright white under the overhead lamp, and drafts lay scattered across the desk in a manila folder, their corners bent and marked with my scrawled notes. On the screen, file names stared back like witnesses. Everly Draft V1, Everly Original, Data Final. These weren't just files, they were evidence of hours spent bent over a keyboard while others slept, of weekends lost to lab reports, of ideas stolen and dressed in someone else's name. I uploaded them all to an encrypted drive, fingers steady despite the tremor building in my chest. I pressed Share Link, saved it, then tucked the access key into a document labeled simply, Contingency, my insurance, my sword. That afternoon, I found myself sitting in the dim corridor of Dr. Bryant's old office building. The air smelled of chalk dust that had seeped into walls over decades, of worn carpet that still carried the footprints of students who had walked these halls before me. I knocked, then stepped inside. His office was cramped, books piled high, papers stacked unevenly. He looked older than when I had taken his class, lines carved into his face like someone who'd seen too much bureaucracy for too many years. I placed my research abstract in front of him, the version I had posted anonymously to the alumni forum, stripped of names, pure in its ideas. He scanned it, brow furrowed, fingers tapping the desk. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Everly, this is good. This is very good. Work like this deserves recognition. It deserves scrutiny." His words should have been enough, but then his expression shifted, softened into warning. "But if you go after your sister or your mother publicly, there will be fallout." I nodded. I already knew, but fallout didn't scare me anymore. Being erased did. When night fell, I returned to my apartment. Outside, Los Angeles glittered. Neon signs blinking. Cars streaking down wet streets, the city moving forward whether or not I did. Inside, my inbox blinked with a new email. No sender name. Subject line: "Don't embarrass yourself." I clicked. The message was short, cruelly casual. "Hate to break it to you, but that scholarship was never meant for you. Your sister fits better. You know it." My stomach clenched. The phrasing, the sharp dismissiveness. It was Vera. I could hear her voice in every clipped sentence. I didn't reply. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. Instead, I drafted a response in my head, words not for them, but for myself. They think silence is weakness, but silence is time to prepare. I wrote it down in the margins of my notebook, surrounding it with doodles of jagged edges, spikes curling out like warning signs. 2 days earlier, I had asked Dr. Alvarez for acknowledgement and been told to wait. Now, I reached further back, to Dr. Bryant, the one who had taught me how to frame a study, who once told me to credit those who supported me, even if no one credited me. I found his phone number buried in an old syllabus. My hands shook as I left a voicemail. It's Everly. I have documentation, drafts, proof. I need your voice if this moves further. You saw my work. You know what I did. He didn't call back until nearly midnight. His voice was slow, careful, but honest. Everly, I remember your work, your late nights in the lab, your obsession with precision. I'll speak up. I sat in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. That was all I needed in that moment. Not victory, not headlines, just one voice that remembered me. The next morning, the alumni forum filled with new posts, anonymous, cautious. Anyone else notice how certain research gets credited oddly lately? Another answered, it's not just one case, it's systemic. I logged in under a pseudonym, fingers poised. Then I typed, ask how many independent scholars had their projects rewritten or republished under other names. Ask who benefits from silence. I pressed send. The words glowed on screen, stark and undeniable. Then I shut the laptop and walked to the window. Sunlight filtered weakly through the trees outside, branches shifting in the morning breeze. For a moment, I remembered something Mom used to say, do your best, and people will see. Those words had once made me hopeful. I had clung to them through long nights and hard semesters, but now I saw them clearly. She hadn't meant people would see me. She meant they would see the ones she chose to spotlight, the ones she approved of, the ones she wanted to shine. The phone rang again. Leora. Her voice rushed, brittle, impatient. Why are you stirring this up? Why can't you just let it go? People are talking. I looked into the mirror above my kitchen counter as she spoke. My reflection stared back, tired, shadows under my eyes, but unflinching. My voice came steady, calm. I'm not letting someone else build my story for me. She went quiet. Then, softly but sharp as a knife, you're making yourself look bad. I hung up. The evening light turned gold across my apartment walls, shadows stretching long and sharp. Somewhere outside, footsteps echoed on the wet pavement. The city hummed, indifferent, alive. I sipped from the latte on my desk, cold now but steady in my hand. My pulse matched its weight, determined, anchored. They thought silence was weakness, but silence was never weakness. Silence was time, and time was mine now, not borrowed, not stolen, mine. They think silence is weakness, but silence is time. Time to prepare. By Friday evening, the apartment felt less like a home and more like a command post. The lights were dim, just the glow of my laptop screen and the fractured stripes of neon and street lamps filtering through the blinds. Papers were scattered across the desk, folders stacked in uneven towers. I had spent days organizing, reorganizing, naming and renaming files until the history of my work read like a timeline no one could deny. Everly Original, Everly V3 Edits, Early Proposal, emails, drafts, screenshots, metadata, all stamped with my name, my hours, my fingerprints. Evidence of the nights I stayed hunched over notes while the rest of the house slept, proof that I was never just a supporting player in my own story. I clicked into Zoom, connecting to the alumni storytelling night, an informal gathering of former classmates, most of whom hadn't seen me in years. My webcam light flickered on. I adjusted my hair quickly, squared my shoulders, and forced myself to breathe. Faces filled the grid, familiar and new. People who had once pulled all-nighters in the same library, who had glimpsed me in lab coats and lecture halls, who maybe remembered my voice but not my name. Behind their screen names, I found fragments of belonging. When it was my turn, I leaned toward the camera. My voice was calm, even though my chest thudded like a drum. I want to talk, I said, about what it feels like to be the ghost of your own family, about watching your life presented by someone else while you sit quietly in the wings. The silence on the call was sharp. No one interrupted. I didn't name names. I didn't scream accusations. I told the story with details sharp enough that they couldn't be mistaken for exaggeration. I described late nights calibrating models, double-checking data, running tests until my eyes burned. I quoted sentences from my own experiments, the same lines now recycled in glossy press releases under someone else's name. I didn't say who, I didn't need to. The recognition flickered across their faces like sparks catching flame. One person raised their chin slowly, lips parted as if to say, "I remember that." Others nodded, their eyes heavy with quiet outrage. Somebody recorded. I saw the small red dot in the corner of the screen and let it happen. By midnight, the clip had traveled further than I expected. It appeared on TikTok, then Reddit, then Facebook. The caption read, "The sister who watched her identity be stolen and said nothing until now." The numbers climbed like fire running up dry wood. 20,000 views, then 100,000, then more. The comments poured in. "This happened to my cousin. She never spoke up." "Name names, sis." "I'm proud of you for speaking up. Keep going." I stayed quiet. I didn't add fuel. I let the story grow on its own. Because sometimes power isn't in shouting louder. Sometimes it's in letting people see what was hidden. By morning, the consequences had already begun. My phone buzzed non-stop with alerts. Leora's latest brand partnership, a fashion sponsorship she had flaunted for weeks, announced they were cutting ties. Their statement was simple. "We believe in originality. Plagiarism is not legacy." Attached was a link. They had listed examples side by side. My published thesis draft, and her so-called new project. Identical language, identical structure. Only the name changed. Then came Vera's post, predictable, defensive. "My daughter works hard for every recognition. She's being unfairly targeted." But the comments didn't support her. They cut like knives. Didn't she once take credit for that community award? Why was her name on a project when she wasn't even enrolled in the course? Funny how her mom always posts about her, but never the other daughter. The defense collapsed beneath the weight of receipts. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Dad. "You're humiliating your sister. Take the videos down." My thumb hovered above the message. For years, I would have apologized, deleted, explained myself. But now I stared at his words until they lost meaning. Then I typed back a single response. "No." I pressed send. He didn't reply. I turned back to my desk, to the stacks of drafts and folders. I logged into the public repository I'd been preparing for weeks. One by one, I uploaded everything: early proposals, raw data sets, versioned files, every draft bearing my name in the metadata. I tagged the folder with words that came to me like a promise. For every invisible daughter. Then I clicked publish. The silence after the upload was deafening, but my heartbeat steadied. Irreversible. Done. By nightfall, the forums exploded. Some commenters scoffed, others expressed outrage, many wrote with gratitude. Messages appeared from strangers I'd never met. I thought I was crazy when they ignored me too. "Thank you for making me feel less alone. They told me no one would ever listen." But you proved them wrong. The city outside my window buzzed with its usual noise, cars rushing, laughter spilling from open bars, people moving forward unbothered by the storm inside my apartment. Street lamps cast long rectangles of light across the rug, as if marking out a stage I had finally stepped onto. I scrolled once more through the avalanche of responses. Leora's former friends now posted their own stories, calling her out publicly. "Why did you take credit for something you didn't do?" one asked bluntly. Vera stayed silent this time, her quiet louder than any denial. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I simply closed the laptop, gathered the last media files into my folder labeled Evidence, and shut the lid. I no longer needed more. I had done my part. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled, and let the silence fill the room. Power doesn't destroy you. It doesn't corrupt you. It reveals you. And tonight, for the first time, it revealed me. Unapologetically, undeniably, and entirely mine. For every invisible daughter. Saturday morning broke with a kind of fragile light that filtered through my apartment blinds like promise and warning all at once. I hadn't slept much. The night before, I'd reorganized my folders for the thousandth time, highlighting the receipts, printing the emails, double-checking the metadata like a soldier checking armor before battle. My phone was a mess of missed calls, unread texts, and unanswered voicemails from family members demanding silence, begging for compliance, or threatening the consequences of exposure. I ignored them all. By 9 a.m., I was walking up the stone steps of the small university auditorium where the panel on academic integrity independent research was scheduled. I wasn't originally invited. I'd been added late, almost as an afterthought, a slot offered when another panelist dropped out. But the moment I pushed open those heavy doors and smelled the polished wood floors, I knew this wasn't an accident. It was an opening. The space hummed with nervous possibility. Students sat in clusters near the front, some with notebooks ready, some with phones out to record. Professors lined the aisles, their postures half skeptical, half curious. Reporters with badges clipped to their coats leaned near the exits. And then I saw them. Vera and Leora. Front row, center. Reserved seating cards on their chairs like royalty at a coronation. Vera in her pearl earrings and crisp cream suit. Leora in soft lavender, her hair cascading in deliberate waves, her smile trained for cameras that weren't even pointed at her yet. They looked comfortable, certain, like they expected another stage where my silence would be their spotlight. My heart thudded. I held the binder close to my ribs, walked to the podium, and adjusted the microphone. The moderator gave the briefest of introductions, my name, my degree, a polite nod to independent contributions in the field of economics. Then he gestured for me to speak. I inhaled. I kept my hands steady. I once watched someone else perform my life, I said, my voice clear, calibrated, not trembling. And I want to talk about what it means when that happens, not by mistake, but by design. The murmurs began, low and uncertain. I didn't give them time to settle. I pulled out a sheet of paper, an email printed in black ink, and held it up to the crowd. This is my sister forwarding my draft to my mother. The email says, she'll never notice where it came from. This, I slid another sheet free, is a screenshot of a submission log with my name erased, replaced by hers. These aren't clerical errors. They are edits of a person, edits of me. Gasps rippled across the rows. One professor sat forward, glasses tilted on his nose. A woman in the back whispered to her neighbor. I pressed on. With every change, I wasn't invisible by accident. I was made invisible. I was rewritten out of my own story. I told them about nights in the lab, sitting hunched over a microscope until the world blurred. About the coding I did at 2 a.m., lines of data etched into my brain. About the graphs, the charts, the hypotheses tested and retested until exhaustion bled into hope. I told them how those hours became someone else's credentials, someone else's applause, while I was left in the shadows, holding nothing but fatigue. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again and again, until I felt the vibration against my ribs like a warning. A glance at the screen showed messages flooding in. What are you doing? You're destroying everything we built. Stop before you regret this. Old words, familiar weapons. I didn't even flinch. On the large screen behind me, the YouTube live chat scrolled quickly. One username appeared, True Daughter 1982. Her words froze me for half a beat. Your mom did the same to me. I was her cousin. She stole my recommendation letter. I never got into college. The audience didn't see my pulse quicken, but I felt my throat tighten. I typed a quick private reply. Thank you. She confirmed details I had only ever heard whispered, stories of lost opportunities, of family members diminished for the sake of Vera's chosen narrative, generations of quiet, generations erased. I looked back at the audience. At Vera, shifting in her seat now, eyes tight. At Leora, whose lips pressed into a hard line, a bead of sweat glistening near her temple. Their polished armor cracked under the heat of truth. The moderator leaned toward his mic, trying to interrupt. Everly, perhaps we should... I raised my hand, calm but firm. No. Let everything be heard. Let truth have its stage. The audience leaned forward collectively, like the tide pulling closer. Professors nodded, board members whispered, students typed furiously into notes apps. Someone raised a phone, recording steadily. When I finished, I didn't cry, I didn't beg, I didn't crumble. I simply lowered the pages, set them on the podium, and let silence take its rightful place. And then it came. Applause. Not the polite kind, not the forced clapping people do out of obligation, real applause, heavy, steady, earned. Backstage, my phone buzzed again. The family group chat lit up. We didn't mean, "You've gone too far. This is embarrassing. You crossed a line." I didn't respond. Outside the auditorium, a crowd gathered. Students stopped me. One young woman, eyes wide, said, "You saved me from thinking I was alone." Another whispered, "My professor used my survey data in his paper and told me I should be honored." I thought I was crazy. I nodded, throat tight, unable to find words. By the time I made it home, the sun had set, but my mind burned bright. I didn't lie awake with regret. I lay awake with resolve. Because now I understood. The legacy they preached of perfection, control, spotless appearances was never about family. It was about silence, and silence is the most fragile empire of all. I whispered into the quiet of my apartment, words meant only for me, but somehow bigger than me. The legacy they worshipped wasn't family. It was silence, and I had just broken it. The legacy they worshipped wasn't family. It was silence. It starts with an email this morning. Effective immediately, your thesis has been reinstated in the honors list. Congratulations, Everly. My hands tremble. Air seems lighter. I read it again. Honors list. My name? Not a footnote, not invisible anymore. The news spreads. Lyora's fellowship is frozen pending investigation. The campus news feed blinks green, then white. I let the words settle in my chest. By afternoon, I'm walking toward the campus auditorium. My stride feels like a reclaiming, soft shoes on concrete, echoes of my heart in every footstep. I step onto the same stage I was meant to speak from weeks ago. Front row, Vera, her head tilted, sharp skissed, Leora beside her, lips tight. I don't look away. I didn't come here to hide. The moderator for a donor alumni gathering introduces me. Today we honor those who speak truth. I adjust the mic, no trembling, just breathing. The audience, a mix of local media, faculty, alumni, followers watching online. The light hits my face. I feel seen. I have something to say. I pause. The silence is charged. For years, I watched a version of my life be sold as someone else's. For years, I held back, believing mistakes, oversight, would someday be corrected. Mistakes aren't what erased me. Choices were. I recount the pattern. Every shifted credit, every photo taken without me, every interview where my name was swallowed. I talk about scientific manuscripts, conference abstracts, data points I collected all alone. I describe how cruelty masquerades as perfection in families, how legacy becomes mask when truth is too inconvenient. Then I say, I may not come from a legacy, but I've started one. I see Vera's face go still. Leora's eyes narrow. Cameras click. I watch faces in the audience. Some nod, some open-mouthed. I press a remote. A video plays up on the projector behind me. Footage of my experiment lab. Voice memos where Vera once asked Leora, "Did they notice?" And confession texts from Leora. "It was easier this way." My own voice from early drafts confirming hypothesis. My name on early submission logs. Evidence. Raw, unedited. The room is still. Then murmurs rise. Then applause. Not polite applause. Applause with meaning. I step off the podium. I walk slowly toward the front steps. Someone in the audience hands me a bouquet. It feels weightless in my arms. Dr. Bryant, standing in the back, his eyes glistening with pride, nods once. Afterwards, I watch as the university issues a public apology. An oversight and serious error. They revoke Leora's fellowship. They remove Vera from her fundraising board position, effective immediately. Headlines run my name in bold. Legitimacy. Under evening sky, I walk away from the building into the quiet glow of streetlights. The crowd thins, cameras turn off, but inside I feel a shift. Not just for me, but for anyone who has been told to stay quiet. Power didn't destroy me, it revealed me. Power didn't destroy me, it revealed me. 3 months have passed since the press conference, the one where I walked onto that stage and spoke truth in front of cameras and crowded seats. Autumn has settled around my new home in Oakland. Leaves turning gold, air crisp in the mornings, quiet nights full of stars. My office window looks out over oak trees and rooftops. I wake up here now, in a house that feels like mine, one I chose, one I earned. Healing does not mean forgetting, it means moving forward with clarity. I begin the day by preparing for a talk at a community college in Richmond. The invitation came unexpectedly. Your perspective on resilience would benefit our students. I accept. I brew tea, dress simply, breathe in that cold morning air filtered through window panes. On the drive, I pass the UC campus I once tried to hide from. I don't flinch. I drive past Vera's old neighborhood. I don't pull over. I'm not waiting for closure. I carry it with me. Justice was settled, or at least visibly so. The ethics board conducted its hearing. Vera was censured and stripped of her responsibilities on university boards. Leora quietly moved out of state. No apology, no press release from them. I didn't block them. I just stopped waiting for acknowledgement. In these months, I finished my manuscript. I named it The Inheritance I Took Back. It is rough, honest, full of the data, the drafts, the memories. A publisher sends these words. You're not just a story, you're a mirror. I read that phrase and almost catch myself tearing up. But instead, I close inbox. I put on a sweater. I sit in my chair near the window, watching drizzle blur the city. The mirror, I think, reflects not only what happened to me, but what many live in silence fearing. One evening, when the sky is a bruised purple, I find a slipped envelope in my mailbox. Handwritten. No return address. You showed us it was possible. Thank you. True Daughter, 1982. I hold it like a fragile thing, set it on my desk. Later, I light a candle and place the letter in a memory box. Next to it lies the diploma that was finally mailed to the right address, the one I should have taken on graduation day. It sits there with all its edges sharp with meaning. Sunday morning is crisp. Friends gather in a small rented hall nearby, a table of folding chairs, soft lighting, warm coffee, cinnamon, and laughter. Dr. Bryant is there, smiling. I slip into the original gown again. It fits differently now. No speeches, just presence. Someone raises a toast to the girl they overlooked and the woman she became. I raise my cup. Faces around me are familiar, classmates, mentors, people who reached out after seeing the video. Some still share messages. Your story saved mine. Others say quietly, I believe you. My heart swells not with pride, but with peace. I think back to nights I lay awake, wondering if I was wrong to fight so hard, if speaking up meant losing more than I gained. But I didn't burn their legacy, I revealed it. I see now that my warning was never to them, but to every person who ever felt invisible and doubted they mattered. Would I do it again? Would I risk the shaming, the cold shoulders, the silence to build something real out of all of this? My answer is always the same. I didn't burn it. I revealed it. And in doing so, I freed myself. Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come from strangers, but from those who share your last name. This story wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming a voice that had been silenced for years. What would you do if the people meant to protect you were the ones who erased you? If this resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. There's always another story to uncover.